So Donald Trump is like the gift that keeps on giving to federal investigators. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So another day, another investigation into Donald Trump has been announced. This time it has to do with his Truth Social, the social networking company that he set up to compete with Twitter after Twitter kicked him off of their website. Trump, of course, used to love Twitter, at one point having as many as 88.7 million followers. A lot to be sure, but nothing compared to President Barack Obama's following at 132 million, just as an aside. During his presidency, of course, we remember how he used to tweet multiple times a day, venting his spleen at all hours of the day and night, attacking friends and foe alike, except, of course, for Vladimir Putin and white supremacists. But that all ended after January 6th, when Twitter decided that his support of the insurrection were grounds for banning him from Twitter. Now, despite the fact that I applaud their move on that point, I did have to wonder. I find the timing curious, given the fact that they allowed him to be on Twitter the entire time he was in office, spreading his bile continually across their platform, lying repeatedly with them doing virtually nothing to address it. And yet, as soon as he's out of office, well, now they can kick him off. The timing seems, shall we say, fortuitous. But at any rate, in the wake of that, Donald Trump pledged that he was going to go and start his own media group, one that would not suffer from the cancellation policies of the rest of the tech world. To help him in this effort, he recruited his former Capitol Hill lackey, Devin Nunes, as the CEO. But despite Nunes' deep experience in technology, he has none, of course, Truth Social has turned into a complete disaster. I mean, all they basically had to do was copy Twitter, which is what they're doing, and just change the name of things from tweets to truths. That's the full extent of it, basically. And yet they can't even get that right. Reports are that the company's suffering financially, and it's dropped way down in terms of the number of downloads. And the rest of the supposed media empire that Donald Trump was going to start as part of this organization has as yet failed to materialize. It seems like this latest venture might be going the way of Trump University. But somehow you've got to hand it to Donald Trump. If there's one thing he's good at, it's grifting. He might not be a good president. He might not be a particularly good politician. He might not be a good businessman, but he is good at stealing money from unsuspecting people, or people really who should have known better, but still give him money anyway. I don't know how he does it. It must be his complete lack of any sense of shame and his willingness to do anything for a dollar. I mean, we've heard the tales of him stealing all the money that was donated by well-meaning people who are trying to stand up for democracy and stop the steal. None of that money was ever actually spent to try to plead Donald Trump's case. It was all just going into his pocket and the pockets of his cronies. I mean, he might actually be the first person who managed to turn a presidential campaign into a money-making venture. And we've heard, of course, about the millions that Jared and Ivanka were able to grift from their time in the White House and the $2 billion investment that Jared was able to get after he left the White House from the Saudis. So apparently this talent is genetic. But anyway, it appears that he's managed to figure out a way to turn this failing Truth Social into something that is going to make money for him personally anyway. What it has to do with is what's called a SPAC on Wall Street, or a special purpose acquisition company. And the company at issue is one known as Digital World Acquisition Corporation. Now, SPACs are companies that sometimes have been known as blank check companies. Essentially what they do is that they set up a company and then go to Wall Street and have an initial public offering, becoming a public company even before they really do anything. The theory behind this is that the SPAC is going to go to Wall Street, get investors to invest in it, and then they're going to take those investments and use them to purchase a private company and take it public. Now, this type of approach has been especially popular with some celebrities, such as Jay-Z, for example, and Shaquille O'Neal, who essentially trade on their celebrity status to get investors to buy into this blank check, essentially giving a bunch of money to that investor that they can then turn around and buy something else, with the idea that because of their celebrity status, that they're going to be able to make this a much more profitable venture. Well, as we know with Donald Trump, except when he's taking care of himself, his impact on his investors always seems to be negative. So at any rate, this special purpose acquisition company ended up raising and gaining commitments for almost $1 billion. And once it received this funding, it announced its plan was then to invest those funds in Truth Social. Now, anybody sitting by the sidelines would say, well, that's obvious. This is just a way for Donald Trump to be able to fleece investors and take a bunch of money and put it into his own pocket. And they'd be right. But here's where the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and now a federal grand jury have some issues. You see, ever since the Great Depression, the way that our financial system has been regulated has essentially been under the theory that disclosure solves everything. That executives are going to do things that sometimes might seem underhanded, but as long as it's done publicly, with everybody having knowledge of it, and with everybody having the opportunity to kind of compete, that will make sure that any kind of criminal activity and insider trading and the like will not occur. In fact, if you think about it, that's the whole idea of insider trading, that trading is done without giving information to the rest of the public. And that's against the law because, again, we have this regime that believes in full disclosure being the way to ensure the integrity of the system. Well, in this case, Digital World Acquisition Corporation had to file paperwork that investors could review prior to it going public that detailed what its plans were. In that paperwork, it did not reveal that it was planning on buying Truth Social. Now, the reason this is relevant is, had investors known that, for sure, they might have decided maybe this isn't the greatest investment possible. Although, again, I wonder, anybody investing in a company run by Donald Trump, if they're really that rational anyway, but again, that's a whole separate issue. But if it turns out that they had basically planned on making this acquisition prior to taking the Digital World Acquisition Corporation public and didn't inform the investors when it was going public, that's a crime because that's not full disclosure. What's more is it seems that right before the announcement was made that Digital World Acquisition Corporation planned to merge with Trump Media and Technology Group, there was unusually high activity in purchasing some securities related to its stock, which makes one wonder, was there some insider trading going on where people knew about this announcement and were expecting that there'd suddenly be a boost in the value of the stock of this SPAC based upon the announcement? That, my friends, is also illegal. So it appears that those are the two things that these regulatory bodies and a federal grand jury now are looking into. Now, the reason this is globally relevant here, of course, is number one, that it involves Donald Trump. But number two, that when you take a company public, you need to make all kinds of disclosures about what the company is about, what your plans are, the background of the people who are financing it. And if this SPAC was not associated with the Trump Media Group and Truth Social, then it could have kept all kinds of things quiet about the lack of viability of Truth Social and about the ineffectiveness of Donald Trump and his organization, and then go and merge with the company later, basically taking these dollars from investors who were duped under the system. And that is likely why Donald Trump took this approach. He knew that by setting up this deal, he'd be able to move quickly and get the money out of the investors as quickly as possible without having to go through the usual process and disclosures that are required to generally take a company public. Well, as we know, this is not the first of Donald Trump's legal crises. And in fact, if you check out over here, here's another video I did about a whole bunch of other ones he's dealing with. But the fact of the matter is, it looks like he's starting to finally face some of the music for his prior and ongoing bad behavior. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.